what I've landed on is my peace is my priority, not your peace. Wow. If we all focus on our own peace and we all just be responsible for our own emotions and our own problems and our own situations, it's a lot better than one person carrying everybody's problems, which is what I have become, not just, in my family life, but like in my professional life.
Welcome to Unreasonable Autonomy. My name is Sarah Grace. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs and innovators who refuse to settle. Here we dive deep into raw, real conversations with boundary pushers who have pursued seemingly impossible ideas and yet have achieved unreasonable results, whether that's in their faith, relationships, health, politics, yes, even business. All of those conversations are happening right here, right now. So let's buckle up because this isn't about playing it safe. Unreasonable ideas, unstoppable results. Let's go. So excited to have Kylee Maughan on the podcast today. Kylee Maughan is an international brand photographer based in small town northern Utah. You guys, she lives like 10 minutes from me. Pretty amazing. She has been a business owner for 14 years and also runs a successful award-winning associate team. She has learned to leverage her kids' school schedule and shoot small brands from all over the world in her backyard. Kylee hosts semi-annual retreats, speaks at conferences, and teaches online courses about running a small business and marketing. Her niche is coaching in helping photographers scale their photography businesses to 6 figures and beyond. Excited to have Kylee on the podcast. Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to Unreasonable Autonomy. I am Sarah, your host, and I am with a dear friend of mine, like someone who's actually kind of a neighbor, right? Hi, I am with Kylee Maughan. Everybody say hi to Kylee. Hi, Kylee. Glad you're here.
I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited that we're also neighbors.
Yes, we are neighbors. And what I love is that we hang out more in a business way than we do like, let's go sit around the campfire, which I'm actually okay with because I'm so inspired by you. This is so good. You guys have already heard a little bit about Kylee and her amazing achievements as a business owner, but I just want to share a couple of things that have brought Kylee and myself together. So we've known each other like 15 years, like 10 years, 15, something like that. It all blends when it gets past 10. But we've known each other for a long time. We've worked in business together. We've done collaborations together. We've seen each other in Costco recently. We connect in very many ways. But one of the things I love about her is when you see her, she's incredibly warm. She will give you a hug. She's a twin, by the way, if you don't know that. She's a twin, and I love her sister as well. But something that I love about you is you are one of the people that absolutely exudes abundant mentality. Okay. There is room for anyone in business, in motherhood, in healing, in forgiveness, in religion. Like you are so welcoming in that way. And it makes it so fun to see you at soccer games or at Costco. I don't care where it's at, but I just soak in that energy. So thank you for being here. And I'm excited to kind of dive into where that came from for you. So welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Okay. I already have chills because like that is something that I've always strove for, and you just put it all into words, and I love that.
Oh, yay. I'm glad that feels accurate to you, right? Accurate for the year 2025, which is when we're recording it. And I really want to dive into just right off of the bat, like we are no nonsense here on the podcast. Like we want to dive into the raw and the real. And I was diving in preparation for this interview. I was diving into your Instagram and I was looking at your stories and I was looking at your office remodel, right? Mm-hmm. And the things that you have decided to bring into that office to inspire yourself and to help you move forward. You've made some huge investments in your business recently. You've hired some coaches. You've done some things that are like next level for you. And one of the things that absolutely busted my heart open, like absolutely cried, was that you have an image up on your bookshelf or something that is from a Taylor Swift song. And it's your theme moving forward for 2025. Will you tell everybody what that is?
Are going to make me cry. Okay, so I have this picture on my wall, and I was just thinking like what I want to hang up and what would inspire me. And the song "I Can Do It With a Broken Heart" just really spoke to me this year because I tragically lost my dad in the fall, and he was probably my number one supporter of my business he is an entrepreneur. He always was an entrepreneur. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point, and has just built a foundation of entrepreneurship and business. And one of the ways we really connected was through business. He was also a photographer, not a professional photographer, just a hobby photographer. And when I started my photography business, he was really excited. But I think even more than the photography part of it, it was the business. It was the self-development. It was the growth. It was all of that. And so losing him has been really challenging because my number one support isn't like a phone call away anymore. And when I land these deals or I do these cool things, I can't call him. And so when I printed that, it just felt like a good remembrance that like I can still do this even with a broken heart. And Taylor Swift is an icon because she performed however many tours. You Swifties, I used to claim to be a Swiftie, but I can't even get in that category anymore. I don't know. I can't keep up. But you Swifties will know exactly how many shows she's done, how many hours they are, how many hours combined through sickness, through heartbreak, through people, making fun of her. And that song she created in the middle of her Eras tour, in the middle of a huge breakup that really broke her. And obviously these are two separate things, but I just think that we can all like kind of take that mentality of like, we can still crush it. Like a lot of people who didn't dive into her life probably didn't even know she was going through what she was going through, but we can all crush it. Even if we have, the sad days and the hard days and the days we don't want to get out of bed and the days we just want to cry, like we can still do it.
Oh, I love this. I love this. And I certainly cannot qualify as a Swiftie either. So we can be friends in that. But I can certainly really, really respect the messages, the very universal messages that she shares that are transforming lives, yours included, right? Yours included. So I want to back up for a little bit for those in my world who may not know you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, they've heard your intro. Yes, they know you're fun to hug and talk to. You have a great motto for the year. But just to catch everybody up to who you are and what you do, and maybe slip in the Xbox story, my favorite foundational part of your story, and I don't want to give it away, what you're kind of doing now. And then I want to dive in a little bit about your dad.
Okay. Great. So I'm Kylee. Obviously, I have started Kylee in photography when I was 18 years old. I was dating my husband at the time, and I had told I told him at the time, like, I want to be a photographer when we can afford it. Like, I know, like, we're broke college kids. I had graduated when I was 17. I was in my freshman year of college. I'd always taken my dad's camera around. I was like girls camp photographer, like stuff like that. I loved it. I wanted to do it, but it was expensive. And I had tried to buy a camera, and I thought I had bought a DSLR, and it was like this janky little like thing. Anyways. And so I told him that. And a couple months later, because this was around December, I walked into his room. This was a couple days before Valentine's Day, and his Xbox was gone. And if you know a 21-year-old boy, like Xbox is life. Like this was his world, his everything he did. And he didn't have an extra Xbox. He didn't have a Switch. He didn't have a PlayStation. Like my kids are spoiled because, they have all these things. He only had this one Xbox, and it was gone. And in its place was a box wrapped up. And he's like, I have your early Valentine's gift. And I was like, okay, well, what is it? I opened it up, and it was my first DSLR that was mine to start Kylee in photography. And what I love about this story is like, it was his sacrifice. He gave up everything that he had to buy. Like, seriously, you guys, an Xbox is like, what, $300? Like that was everything to us. Yeah. And it's so silly now. But in that time, that was like all the money that he had and all the money that he could give me. And he did. And he put everything on the line for me to start my business. And then later that summer, I started like taking like friend weddings, like church gym wedding, like just really low key things. And I was able to buy back his Xbox. And that's kind of like our story of love. And I think it's a theme for our life too. There have been many times in our careers where I've had to step up as breadwinner while he takes a shift in his career, or he has to step up while I have babies. And it's gone back and forth our entire last 15 years together. And that leads us to where we are at now. I now have built this really successful photography business. I have a team of over 12 women that work for me. 6 of us are photographers. And then we have like editors, marketers, assistants, that kind of thing. We do family photography and wedding photography like we did when we started, but our main source of revenue is now commercial brand photography. We landed some really cool big brands this last year, like Gerber Baby and Boogie Boards and Goldfish Swim School, like brands that you've like heard of and are amazing. And we're doing that. So I run the team. And then in addition to photography and running the team and all of that, I also help coach photographers on how to build 6-figure businesses, because When I started, I literally $300 camera thought, oh my gosh, like I'm never even gonna book a wedding. I don't even know. I think I can,
Right.
to booking $9,000 contracts, 1-day contracts. Like the shift has been wild. And now I want to help other photographers get out of that like hobby business mindset and see what they're like capable of, and they can build a sustainable career.
It's extraordinary. And I see that you mainly work with women that are photographers. And I want to back up a little bit about what you said about your love story with your husband. Oh, Luke, he goes by Luke. Okay. Yep. So Luke is her husband. And one of the things that I have really observed is what you said. This started a long time ago. You guys' ability to support and sacrifice and juggle tends to be like a stressed word. I don't know if I'd call it, that's how you guys have done it, but just this ability to kind of support each other in different seasons of life. And how has marriage surprised you?
Oh, yeah. I just think it's not anything like what you think marriage is, right? Marriage is I think in our heads, it's like, get married so someone can support you, so you can stay home, have kids. Like that's what I was taught. Like marriage is find a husband that can be rich enough for you to do what you want to do and whatever. And the way I see marriage, and I think it's different honestly from a lot of still the world's view of marriage is like this teamwork. Like we are a team with everything in our lives, his work, my work, our home, our kids. I think it surprises people when my husband shows up at the doctor with my kids sometimes instead of me, or when he calls to make the appointments, because, especially in our community, in our small community where we're sometimes a little old school, traditional, it can be hard to see like a woman like, oh, where's your wife? Is she sick? Why isn't she? No, she's working. Like, oh, well, aren't you supposed to, and like, I think for us, we have really taken marriage in as like teamwork. And that is like the foundation of our marriage. I mean, the juggling it sometimes is a little bit juggly. Yeah. It is a little like there's a lot to balance, especially because we both are very ambitious people with lots of goals. Yeah. And we both want to be very present for different reasons. He felt like he didn't grow up with a lot of present parenting. I grew up with the best parents in the world. And so we both want that for our kids. And so I think for us, it really just, the word I would say for marriage is teamwork.
Teamwork. Okay. I want to dive even further into that with you because I love the idea of teamwork. And I feel like marriage can be fun because of spice, right? Mm-hmm. Sugar and spice and all things nice. So how have you allowed yourself to still love and have spice and excitement with each other and not just gone into like a roommate scenario? What are the secrets?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have never really felt like we've been in a roommate relationship. And I think that has come with just prioritizing Luke and Kylee. Like we are a team. We have these businesses. We have kids. We have errands. We have this, but we have Luke and Kylee. And that has looked different in different seasons. Cause like when we had small kids at home, we had to really like schedule that in and make sure that was on the schedule. There was one year where we challenged ourselves to a date night every Friday night because we were in a stage of life that like we didn't see each other. It was like he'd come home, I'd leave, we'd go to bed, like stuff like that. And so it's very important for us to connect, whether that's force date nights. And now it's a lot easier. Our kids are in school. We both work from home. In some ways that could be harder though, because we could both get into the rhythm of working in our office and stuff like that. But we really prioritize our relationship. And that includes communicating with each other of what our needs are, whether that's like physical needs or needs around the house so we can help with each other's mental load. So communication's huge. And then also like time. I would say time is huge. Giving each other time. We have our oldest is 12. So we can leave the kids with him. He can babysit. We can go on date night. If we're feeling like overwhelmed, stressed, end of the week, like burnout, we're like, let's go on a date. Let's just get out of here and go on a date. We also prioritize trips. We go on a lot of just Luke and Kylee trips, whether it's just an overnight. Like he has a work thing down in Salt Lake. I'm going to come with him. He might have to work for a few hours, but then we can, have our time too and have the drive. Or just like we have points we use every year at the same resort and we go 1 or 2 times a year, just the two of us to Mexico. And it's just, I think those are the times that we can reconnect and like reprioritize those relationships.
Okay. Part 2 of the podcast is how you get points for Mexico. We will talk about that another time. I will text you. I'm going to text you. I love this so much. And I think that there is this real challenge in entrepreneurship and in quote unquote marriage in general, where specifically with entrepreneurship never ends, right? You are your boss. And that was a whole point we all got into it in the first place is I want to be my own boss, but there is no clocking out. There is no 4 p.m., 3 p.m., 5 p.m., whatever that may be. And so that can wreak havoc on a marriage, because there is always more to be done. Kylee, there is always one more bigger brand that you need to be landing, or that you can land, or that you're ambitious to land, or whatever it may be. What have been some of the habits or like tactics, like brass tack things that you have done to end the business, focus on the relationship? Like, what does it look like?
That's a great question. And I'm not always great at this, because there are different seasons where I have to be like more on my business. Right this week, for example, I'm in the middle of a launch right now. And launch week, it just feels like I'm just working all the weekends, all the nights, all the whatever. It just feels like I'm working, right? But for the most part, I like to clock out when my kids start coming up the front steps. So like 3:30, I have started to set an alarm on my phone for 3:30. That's when they get out of school. They get off the bus at like 3:45. And so that I can transition anything that I'm doing finishes, and then I can be helping them, taking them places. And so that is one major thing. Another thing is I don't work Saturdays and Sundays anymore. And I used to have to because my kids, that was like when I could get help. But that has shifted now that my kids are in school and I have that time to work when they're in school. That priority has shifted so that my weekends are for family. And again, there are some times where there's launch and I'm working the weekends, but for the most part, like that time, even if I'm not just full dedicated to family, it's like, it's time for me to read a book. It's time for me to go shopping or go to the grocery store, whatever, without feeling like I am tied to a computer. So boundaries are huge. Alarms help a ton with boundaries, because sometimes it's hard to have those boundaries. You have to like kind of force yourself out of them. And then the third thing that I do that I think has changed my life over the last decade is that I have like an ongoing reminders list. It's just the reminders app on iPhone, and they're categorized. And so anytime I start thinking of things and things start popping to my mind, I just go put them on my reminders app so that my next workday, I can get back to it. But like, because that's the hard thing, right? Our brain never turns off and the ideas are always flowing. And sometimes it's like when I'm driving my kids to something that it's like, oh, that'd be so great. And like my old habit would want to like, no one talk to me. I need to make these calls. I need to do this thing.
Yes.
But new habit is write it down and then do it, the next day. And so notes and reminders really help me just kind of brain dump. I think brain dumping is honestly such an underutilized tool and such a simple thing that we can all do.
Yes. And you just don't overthink, right? That's something I've admired about you for like 15 years is the ability to not overthink social media, organization, hiring. Like you're like, let's just do this thing.
Maybe to a fault.
I don't know. I think it's a gift. And I was reading in Atomic Habits. I am going to make a huge assumption that you've read it or listened to it.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I was reading in that, and it was talking about how the people that are most disciplined are actually the people that don't need to be disciplined, right?
Yeah.
You've heard that concept?
Yeah.
Are you a disciplined person?
Yes, I'm the first kid. I'm the first kid. I'm oldest of 6 kids. I grew up just a straight A, want to be obedient, want to be good kid naturally. And I have 3 kids with ADD that do not have any of that. And I am confused every day of my life. But it teaches me, a lot about how we're all different and we all just have different, things that make us tick. And so I am very disciplined. I'm not always motivated. And I think people think that I'm always motivated, but I am always disciplined. And that's what you can see on the outside.
Wow. So you legit are disciplined. It's not that you're using great tools. It's you are actually disciplined.
Well, and I'm using great tools.
Yeah.
In addition.
At your core, you are disciplined.
Yes.
And do you feel like people don't give you credit for that?
I don't know. I think people see me differently than I see me. I think people see my output. They see like, wow, she's doing this and wow, she's doing that. She has so much energy. Wow, she just knows so much. She's doing so much. And I think for me, it's like, it's just systems and it's just habits that everyone could develop. And yes, I do know I come from an entrepreneurship background, from being raised in that. And so a lot of the limiting beliefs people have in business aren't there for me, that people have to work for. So I think that has set me, a step up in just being able to go for it. But I think people think that they can't do what I'm doing because of X, Y, and Z. But so yeah, in some ways, I guess people aren't getting any credit for it. I'm just doing the stuff. If you did the stuff, it would work,
Yes. And can I just like shout all my praises of like why you're sitting here today? And I think down that same vein is when I see your output, I just see so much balance. I see you ice skating. I see you reading a book. right? That is not business oriented, right? I see being in the sauna. I see like a well-roundedness to it. And can I relate this to one of my experience in being one of your clients? What I've recognized with you is you are incredibly result driven. And I think part of your gift of not overthinking is such a gift. So Kylee photographs our family every year, right? And we pay her for that. And we go to this location and she knows we need this photo, this photo, this photo, this photo, these photos, whatever. Oh, Sarah, do you want profile pics for your business? Yes, please. Whatever. It's all included, right? But you get it done in like 12 to 15 minutes, right? Which is why my husband is like, Kylee is everything. So like the amount of time doesn't matter to you because you know what can be provided in, right? And I see it in your life as far as self-care, and I see it as time with your kids. Like you're way more concerned about just what is this going to produce? And it doesn't need to take an hour and a half. That's how long I used to photograph. An hour and a half, Kylee. What?
Yeah, you probably were providing the same like different shots. And that's I see that with a lot of people. And that's I literally my first class last week with my photographers, I was like, listen, it's not an efficiency problem. It's an overthinking problem. You are looking at should I do this picture? Should I do this picture, this picture? I'm like, guess what? The client doesn't know there's two different pictures that are almost identical. Just pick one and move forward.
Oh, amen. Amen. So just you're practicing what you preach is really what I want to show, that like this is enveloped in all areas of your life, which I think is great. I would love to take a pivot here since you mentioned being raised in entrepreneurship, if you're open to that. There is a story here, right? There is a story about the family you grew up in, about your family that broke a little bit, and then your family that has been so changed over the past 6 months. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the ride that it's been. And so I'm trying to plug in this like motivated, disciplined, like 15 minutes I can produce gold for every family I photograph kind of person with when tragedy strikes. Do you overthink? Do you like, just talk me through, maybe let's talk about the family you grew up in and then when it split, and then let's just go. Let's go.
Okay. So I was raised in a family. There are 6 kids. I'm the oldest with a twin sister. Of the 6 kids, Dad was an entrepreneur. He always was in an MLM company, which I know gets a bad reputation, but like that's what our livelihood was. And he ended up, when I was in high school, starting a MLM company with some of his past partners from another company. So we kind of saw the side of him growing companies through like, networking and that kind of stuff, and then starting a company that taught people how to do that. So through all that, my mom was the stay-at-home mom, but she did a lot of the bookkeeping and a lot of the back end things and raising the family. My dad traveled a lot, and a lot of his travel was to go speak at things or to go to trainings. And so my mom was usually pregnant or having babies or whatever. So each of those trips, he would pick a kid to take with him. So we got like a front row seat at like a lot of really, like empowering events. Like if you've ever been to any sort of conference or convention, I know Sarah has, the energy's high and people are hyping you up on, on whatever the company is, but also self-development and improving yourself and goal setting and all of that. And so I was raised to do that. I was raised in that kind of mindset. My dad was a very fly by the seat of your pants, just like go for it kind of guy. If you know Enneagrams, he's an Enneagram 7. He had a little ADD that I diagnosed for him, recently in the last couple of years. I was like, Dad, you have ADD. He's like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. And because of that, he didn't overthink anything. He just went for new, like someone came to him and was like, Darren, I think you would be really good in this company. He's like, hey, let's do it. And like, he just didn't think in that. I've taken that part of him on, and I'm grateful for that because I do see how the overthinking can get you, stuck in a lot of different ways. So that's how my dad was. And he was always kind of like just learning, growing, looking for opportunities, taking risks, that kind of thing. My mom is a lot more on the like level headed, like budget. Let's budget. Let's,
Sure. I love it.
Yeah. And honestly, they were a good balance in that way of like, I have the sides of my mom of like, okay, there needs to be some like, let's not just spend thousands of dollars. Let's make sure this is a good thing. But then also my dad of like, going for the next thing. So like I'm so grateful that I have equal parts of that with them, because I think both parts are really important in like, not living in scarcity, but also not thinking you're so abundant that there's no consequences, that kind of thing.
Right.
They were amazing in that way. And then grew up, came to college, and started having a family. Our family stayed very close. We were the first ones that came to college here in Utah, and they live in Washington, and they came up, every other month, it's felt like. And then I had the first grandbaby, so then they were there even more. And so we stayed really a close unit. My dad attended some of the workshops that I put on. My Kylee sleepover, he paid to come. I got him a robe and everything, like a little sparkly robe. And he would fly out to conferences with me when I would go to conferences. He's like, oh, I want to go to that with you. And so he was very much a part of my business and life. My mom, obviously, very much a part of my business and motherhood and everything too. And then in 2019, at the end of the year, my dad suddenly left my mom. And that was a very, very, very emotional, heartbreaking time, going through just this sudden loss of what you thought your family was, what you thought your foundation was, what your future might look like now. Like, it was a very heavy, heavy time. And the hard thing about divorce that's different than death that I have found is that it's very lonely because you can't talk about it. And I'm a very open, if you follow me on social media, I'm pretty transparent about what's going on in my life. And this period of my time, I couldn't talk about it because it wasn't mine to talk about.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because it was, it was their story. I mean, I was part of that, but I don't want people to hate my dad. I don't want people to, be mad at anyone. I don't want people to judge the situation. And so in that time, it was just like such a lonely, behind the scenes heaviness. And in that time, my sister got a brain tumor and we had to do surgery for that. My husband quit his job and I became the breadwinner for an entire 12 months. My son became allergic to literally everything and was hospitalized multiple times. And COVID hit and my business started going backwards. In that time, I was refunding thousands of dollars. I lost teammates and they just left. They didn't die of COVID or anything, but it was a really, really, really heavy time. And I think it's interesting because I think being the breadwinner is what pushed me to continue to survive, for my business to survive during that time, because I had no option. I think when you're in that kind of heavy grief, honestly, COVID was less heavy. It was kind of nice. I was like, okay, now everybody's in grief together. Now we're all a part of this instead of feeling like I was the only one in grief. And in that time, we're healing relationships. We're having hard conversations. We're setting boundaries. We're learning what our new family looks like. And that was a really heavy time. And it happened for a while. It wasn't just 1 month and it was over. I felt like that whole year was a year of healing and growth and learning and therapy and coaching for all of us. And through that, I learned about forgiveness. And in a deep way, I learned about unconditional love. I learned about letting go and letting God take the wheel. I learned about focusing on my own relationships instead of how relationships are affecting other relationships. And I came out of that with a stronger relationship with my dad than before because I let go of a lot of stuff that just didn't need to be between me and him. And I'm grateful for that because then the next year he got married, we got a new step family. And then the year after that, he moved to Utah. And then the year after that, he was killed on a vacation when he was hit by a drunk driver. And I'm so grateful for these last 4 years where I've been able to still develop a really close relationship with him and just have no guile and just pure love for him and our relationship. And just so much growth. I think I'm glad I had those 5 years from 2019 to 2024 to really heal and develop the relationship that I want, because I think it would be such a different story if it happened in 2020 or something like that. But it reminds me that life is so fragile and we don't have time to wait.
Wow. Life is so fragile. We don't have time to wait. So let me lean in to something you said. You said, I learned a lot about forgiveness and unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And I want to parallel that with the world we live in, that I'll put it in quotes if you're watching on YouTube. We live in a world of cancel culture.
Yeah.
Right. And this is toxic, cut it off, and this kind of language. And so how do you solidify that in your mind on, okay, and you use the word specifically suddenly, that my dad suddenly left my mom, right? And I don't know how you found out, and you can talk about that if you want, but like how did you come to grips with, I'm going to move to repair this instead of I'm going to move to defend my mom and support? Like, that's complicated.
Yeah, it was very complicated. So interestingly enough, 3 days before my dad left, I had started a gratitude journal challenge for myself of every day I was going to write 10 things. And I had set out to do this a lot of times, but this time I was sticking to it. And so my dad left 3 days later, and I continued this gratitude challenge for the next 2 years. And I wasn't every day, but almost every day, where I would write 10 things I was grateful for. And that is what changed my heart, because there can be so many hard things going on, and so much heartbreak, and so many things that are going wrong, and so many ways people hurt you. But there are also so many things to be grateful for, so many things in that specific relationship, so many things with the world around us, so many ways that God is seeing us in these trials. And that's what changed my heart.
So gratitude is what unlocked forgiveness for you.
Yep.
As the oldest of 6 siblings, how responsible did you feel to lead the dynamic of how the divorce was going to be navigated?
Yeah, I guess I have never really felt like, it's interesting because in our family dynamic, I don't have the strongest personality. And I don't know if my siblings would agree with that. But I really don't. I think they would agree with that, actually. I really don't have the strongest personality. And so I've never really put myself as the boss, even though I think maybe that they have seen me as like the oldest, like the girls are the oldest, they're in charge, whatever. But like, I never saw myself as that, just because most of my siblings have stronger opinions than me, are louder than me. And you know, like, I'm kind of more like, I'll do whatever most of the time. I'm like, I don't want to blanket statement that, because my siblings will be like, no, you aren't, whatever. Listen to this. But for the most part, I would say, like, in my mind and inside of me, I have less strong opinions than most of my siblings. And so this scenario pushed me into like this leadership role in my family that I had never really taken on. And it was interesting because being the oldest, I felt like I'm my mom's protector. I'm my siblings' protectors.
Right.
You know, I'm the one who needs to like liaison with grandma. I'm the one that needs to liaison over here. And it was complex, and it was hard, and it put me into a lot of hard conversations that I don't usually get myself into. And I will say I'm super grateful for that, because I have learned how to have hard conversations. And 5 years ago, like the problems that I have to deal with brands or with my team or with whatever, like, I'm able to just like take the emotion out and just like have the conversation. Whereas before, it would like riddle me anxiety to like even have any sort of like hard confrontation or critique or anything like that, because I just wanted to keep the peace. I'm like, I'm an Enneagram 9. I don't like conflict. I don't like ruffling people's feathers. I would rather like have my ruffled feathers inside of me, like being up in flames, before I'm going to bring somebody else's feelings into the situation. And so I think, yeah, in a lot of ways, I did feel like I had the pressure of everyone. And I actually, I became a life coach, not like a life coach, but like I did training so that I could help my family. And I literally just use those skills with my siblings and my parent. Like, I don't do it for other people, but I literally like did that.
So what do you think it is about really the very black and white view of either go like full bore, do the conflict, cut it off if they won't listen, versus the keep everything inside, keep the peace? Like, where do you land in it?
Yeah, this is something that I have really, really had to work on over the last lifetime.
Right.
And this is where I landed, is that by allowing or let's see, by letting things go so much so that everyone else feels the peace. Yeah. I'm the one who's not feeling peace, right? And and also I'm enabling people, right? Like, if that's a problem and I'm not bringing it up, I'm enabling them. They're going to keep continuing the problem. It's going to build resentment. It's going to fester. It's going to blow up. It's going to get worse. And there's been situations even in my business where I've let people stay on my team while refunding thousands of dollars, while having so many problems, while just them really just building this, like, I don't know, resentment up inside of me for like a year before I'm ready to like, okay, enough is enough. And now I'm not like that. I just feel like if there is a problem, I'm going to address it within the week. And if it comes up again, I'm going to address it again. Like we are not going to have things fester. We're not, because what I've landed on is my peace is my priority, not your peace.
Wow.
If we all focus on our own peace and we all just, can be responsible for our own emotions and our own problems and our own situations, it's a lot better than one person carrying everybody's problems, which is what I have become, not just, in my family life, but like in my professional life.
Well, it's fascinating. This was actually recently confirmed with an interview with Mel Robbins and some really fabulous doctor that works with autoimmune diseases. And he talks about how autoimmune diseases show up. 80% of the cases that show up are in women. And he thinks it is rooted in this, the inability to prioritize their own peace.
Yep.
Right? Like, do you see truth in that?
Oh, 100%. And I'm really big on the belief of feelings buried alive never die. They just fester, they grow, they get bigger, the problems get bigger, the relationships get worse. And I've really tried to lean into feeling the feelings, resolving the problems, and just working through the issues instead of burying them.
Well, and it is not lost on me that within a space of 4.5 to 5 years, that you were faced with having to have really tough conversations and owning feelings and talking about peace, and then faced with the absolute unimaginable loss of your dad. And you and I are connected by grief, by losing a parent in an unexpected way. And yet I cannot begin to fathom what that moment was like for you. Can you talk to us about where you were, how you found out, and then let's unpack a little bit about what you have now learned about forgiveness just months later? I mean, this is raw.
Yeah. So I was sleeping. It was 4 a.m. and I actually was awake because I had just gone to the bathroom, and my stepmother, who I love and is absolutely amazing, just a saint of a person. That's another relationship that, I was able to heal in the process of everything. But we grew up with her. So, have a lifetime of memories with her. And anyways, so she tried to call me 3 times, and my phone, I sleep on Do Not Disturb. I turn on Do Not Disturb like pretty early in the evening until my kids are at school. So I don't ever have my phone. You can literally never get a hold of me after the hours I don't want people to get a hold of me. And so then my husband's phone starts ringing, and instantly I knew something was wrong, but I was really confused because I just talked to my dad the night before. Well, I had talked to Vanessa the night before, and I had asked her, or I had texted her about one of my kids or whatever. And she's like, oh, your dad's already in bed. And so I was just like, how could this turn? Like, it's the middle. I was so confused. It's 4 a.m. It's the middle of the night. How can something be wrong? Like, he was in bed. And so at first I was like, okay, he got sick or he fell. My dad had Parkinson's disease. And while he was still very healthy and alert, sometimes he tripped and fell and stumbled because he would shuffle and things like that. And so that's where my mind went. And honestly, once he got off the phone and told me that my dad was killed by a drunk driver, I just sat there just blinking for like 45 minutes. Like, no, he didn't. Like, what? Like, that's not how his story is supposed to end. Like, my dad has Parkinson's disease. He didn't die by a drunk driver. Like, he didn't, there's no way. He hiked Mount Rainier 3 times with Parkinson's disease. He rides his e-bike in the mountains and crashes and does stupid stuff all the time. He walks the dog with the e-bike and gets concussions and fractures his skull. Like, he's not supposed to die by a drunk driver. And so that shock kind of carried on for like a week. I mean, obviously after like 45 minutes, I'm sobbing, but that morning was my son's 12th birthday. And I didn't want to ruin it because he's had a really hard year emotionally and mentally. And he finally had friends coming. So we decided to go through with the party and not tell our kids. And so I had to pretend I was okay while I was living in this cloud for the next 5 or 6 hours with these 12-year-olds that were singing this stupid potato song at the top of their lungs in my car. I'm like, why? Why do they have to be 12? And I remember during the party, I never had gotten a birthday cake. So I had to run over to Walmart from the jump zone and go get a birthday cake. And I'm just like, how is this even my life right now that I'm walking around Walmart trying to get a cake and my dad is dead. And so that was really a hard day. As soon as the kids left, I actually kicked him out. I was like, Luke, I came home from the party and just fell apart upstairs. And I said, Luke, I need you to kick these kids out. Like as soon as lunch, we need to tell the kids. And so then the kids came in and it was the loudest wails and sobs I've ever heard. My dad wasn't just like one of those grandpas, that like, oh yeah, we see grandpa every once in a while and the kids are forced to go give him a hug. Like my dad is, like I said, he's super fun and Enneagram 7. So he was always taking them on adventures and very present in our lives, very, very present. He had just taken my son a week before on our birthday date. He drove up from Salt Lake, took him out to the arcade, played every arcade game with him. Like he is like hands-on grandpa. And so that was devastating. And I mean, it continued as we saw pictures of the car and we saw pictures, of everything. And then 2 weeks later, when we saw his body for the first time, it was just a really heartbreaking experience over the next few weeks. And that first day, my mom was actually in town. So we woke her up and she was here with us and obviously grieving as well. And also supporting us. My brothers came over, my sister came over, and we just were all together. And then the next day, my mom drove home to be with our family, the 2 sisters that still live in Washington, and the rest of us that live in Utah went to our stepfamily. My stepmom had me at home that night before, like at midnight. So we went and we were just together that whole next 4 days or something. And I mean, it was just really heavy. And during that, just back to the forgiveness, I'm just so grateful that there was not a single bad feeling. There was not a single regret for me. There was not anything that I'm like, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have done that. Because my dad had a degenerative disease, I was really adamant about making memories. We had just taken him camping with us. He's come skiing with us every year, jet skiing. We have a cabin in Bear Lake and he comes up and stays with us. Like we've had all this quality time with him because I knew that his like good days of being able to do these physical activities that we all love to do together were numbered. I knew he wasn't going to like die any day or anything like that. But like, he might not be able to camp in a few years. He might not be able to he could probably do jet skis, but he might not be able to ski. And so we were it was really important to us to incorporate him into the things that we loved. And I'm without that, forgiveness path and just holding on to grudges or defending my mom or being in a position where it was not my business. Like, this was my parents' marriage. My dad has never been a bad dad to me. I don't need to be involved as a mediator of that. Like, and that was a big thing to let go of, but really powerful in building the life that I have no regrets for.
I'm just astonished. I'm astonished by the story. I'm astonished by the word that comes to me is cruelties. That is probably the wrong word, Kylee, and I'm sorry, but the cruelties of Jump Zone and the cruelties of like having to go get the cake and like figure out this birthday party. Like there are so many cruelties associated with something so unexpected. And I can't help but like, what connections? I know you're a God person, right? You and I are both God people and connect on that realm. What has your relationship been like with God through this experience? What has it looked like?
I feel like it's interesting. And I don't know if it's just because, we'll have to, I don't want to test it out on different scenarios, but I feel like God prepared me for the death of my dad because of his degenerative disease and the way things were looking and just the whole situation. A lot of things happened that I don't think would have happened, like him moving to Salt Lake and the quality time we spent together and that kind of thing. Like in our minds, and in many ways, I've already grieved my dad. I've grieved my dad when he left my mom in the relationship that he had with our family as a full unit. And then I grieved my dad in the way of he's going to be strong and able to do everything that we have to do. And then, the ultimate grief. And it was almost like he gave me steps to grieve him so it didn't hurt as bad. And I also feel like, I truly feel like it was his time. And I don't want people to say that to me because I don't want it to take away the pain because it doesn't take away the pain. But I just know that Parkinson's disease can get so much worse. And he fought so diligently for over 10 years. And he did everything beyond what this man got diagnosed with Parkinson's and then decided to climb Mount Rainier because he had always wanted to, and he didn't want to get worse. And he did it every year until he summited 3 years in a row. And like, he also only had one lung because he had one that collapsed from a different thing. Like, this man just, he did everything full stop. And he was present with us even when he didn't feel good. And he camped with us even when he could barely walk. This summer, when we took him to Bear Lake, he wasn't good. He was having a bad day, and I hadn't ever seen him that bad. And I had to catch him when he fell out of the Bear Lake gas station. My 6'5" dad.
Oh my gosh.
Because he'll just stop walking and then he'll just do. And I had never seen that. And I just think for me, it was kind of like, okay, like this stops the suffering that he has done. He endured till the end, and he did it with joy. And so for me, I have felt this specific death I have been prepared for, and it didn't make it less painful in any way. But at the same time, I can see God's hand in a lot of the details.
Well, I am so moved, struggling to keep my soul about me for a minute. I know early on, I said, Kylee, you don't overthink things, right? And you're so fast-paced and so able to make quick decisions and do all these things. And I actually think that was really a disservice to you, because as I hear about your dad and how he fought Parkinson's, we're very related in that way. I actually think you guys think very deeply, your dad and you, that you actually see something, and it's not that you don't think about it. It's that you think deeply and you think quickly and you go. And so there is so much of that full stop of your dad in you. Oh my word. That's the motto, right? That is the motto. And so I almost feel like I need to apologize for saying you just don't think things through or something like that. But I just see so much of him in you in that depth, right? I don't want to not point out that there is a real depth there with you and your dad, even though you are fun and you are driven and you are fast-paced, that there is a real depth. So sort of a writing on the wall kind of experience that you have been able to see and witness. And I imagine a lot of that has come through your habits of gratitude and seeing and all of those self-development things you went to with him from a very young age have been real mercies in your life. So as we come to the close of this conversation, and thank you, first off, for your openness, for crying with me. I almost didn't want to face this because of all the feelings that are surrounded by these kinds of things. Forgiveness. What do we get wrong about it?
I think that we think forgiveness is for the other person. And what I have found is it's interesting because through the times, that I was, mad at my dad or the situation or anyone involved in all of the last 5 years, I don't think that any of those people even realized I was mad, because I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not calling them. I'm not getting mad. I'm addressing things, but from the way that I address things in a loving kind of way. And there were times in the journey that I was really, really mad with someone, throw Go-Gurt at the wall, mad, anger. And I don't think that the person on the other side of that any of those people knew that I was feeling that way. And when I started writing in my journal and doing the gratitude, and I would write letters and that I wouldn't send, and I would process emotions that way and scribble them out and whatever. As I was doing that and processing these feelings, everything started to get lighter and lighter and lighter. And the whole time, those people kept their steady relationship with me. Nothing changed on their end, and everything was changing on my end. And I think with forgiveness, we focus so much on what the person did, or they didn't say sorry, or they didn't admit that they were wrong, which none of those things happened for me. I never had those conversations with the people that I needed to forgive. They never, we never had those conversations. I forgave every single person in every single scenario that I was mad with without having a conversation with them. And I think that is an important piece is we don't have to pick up the phone and be like, I'm mad at you for this. You didn't say this, or we don't have to wait for someone to apologize or admit that they did something wrong. We can forgive someone and completely get rid of the weight of that on our own side. And what it does is it changes us, not the other person. Forgiveness is for us.
And was that natural to you?
No, I never really understood that about forgiveness. And it was really unnatural. But now that I know that, my life is 1,000,000 times easier.
Blunt question. Is there anything in your mind that is unforgivable?
Ooh, that's hard. That's hard. I'm a hard person to ask that to because I'm an Enneagram 9 and I'm like, I look at like all sides of everything and I don't know. Okay, this is an interesting timing for me. I just read Sherry Frankie's book about her abuse from her mother and it's sickening. And if she never forgave her mom, I would not judge her for that. However, I think if she forgave her mom and then decided she never wants to see her again, and she just cut her out of her life for the rest of eternity, I think she would feel better. So wow. I think there's a difference between forgiveness and letting someone back in. Mm-hmm. And so I think everything is forgivable, but I don't think you should let someone back in if it's something that is past the point of what's okay in your life.
And that's so fascinating because if forgiveness is really about me, right, it would make sense that it's a completely different ballgame to allow someone else the privilege of being in your life or something that is completely separate. Yeah. Oh, fascinating. You are the fourth person that has told me about that book.
Oh, it's really sad, but her strength, I don't know if she's kind of going private, but her story of resilience and trauma it's very inspirational.
Oh my goodness. I may have to reach out to her. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for being here in full-blown unreasonable autonomy practice. I'm just going to ask you like 4 rapid fire questions. Okay. Fun to answer. We'll wrap it up. For those of you who are dying to live more in Kylie's world, which all of you should, we will link everything that you could possibly need on getting to know her and being able to watch her shoot Gerber Baby and like all of the amazing thing that she's doing. And please pay attention to her whole life, to the marriage, yes, to the business, but to the mothering and to the faith and to the fun. There just is so much to you that I don't want a single person to miss. So we'll link everything in the show notes. So 4 questions for you. What is your favorite sports team?
Oh, I'd probably say the Chiefs just because I am kind of a Swiftie, but I know they're getting a lot of hate right now. So I don't know if I should say that out loud.
We will not link that in the show notes. Okay. What's a bucket list item that you haven't done yet?
Oh man, these are hard. See, this is where I'm not decisive because there's so many things. And I'm also one of those people, once I put it on the bucket list, I do it really quickly.
It'd be a problem.
We're going to Switzerland this spring. That's been on the bucket list. So we'll say that.
Say Switzerland, and you're doing it, which should surprise no one after listening to the podcast. So she's already checking it off. If you had the chance to go to outer space, would you? We're talking to Elon. You would not do it. Mm-mm. Okay. Even if Luke came with you?
Oh, I don't know. I have this thing about being like, I did it, but I don't like cruise ships. I don't really like international travel because I like to be able to get back to my family by car if something went wrong. Like I just have this weird thing where I want to be like, so if I'm in the ship in the middle of the ocean so I think if my whole family was there, like everyone I cared about, I'd be fine.
Fair. Okay, we'll put in a call to Elon, see what we can make happen, right? Okay, and then last one is just, what's one book everyone should read?
Oh, wow, that's hard for you. I read 60 books last year, which is big for me.
What's currently
one of the most recent ones I read that I really liked was called You're a Badass. And I just think it's a really good mindset one of just reminding you that like your thoughts are so powerful. And there are so many books. I've read so many books like that. And I know there are a lot out there, but that one has just really motivated me this year to just like step into who I know I can be and just like thinking that way.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for your fight to be unreasonable in life. It is so inspiring. It inspires me. And so thank you for living the extraordinary life that you've gone after. Thanks, Kylee.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to the Unreasonable Autonomy podcast. If you loved this episode, my guests and I would love to hear about it. Go to the show notes to reach out and let me know what resonated with you or what topics or guests you want to hear in the future. I am here to create for you. Look, I deeply admire your commitment to pushing boundaries and going after an unreasonable life. Keep dreaming big, taking bold steps, and expecting the unreasonable. For more, go to the show notes to dive deeper into the conversations that will keep you going. Thanks for being here.